Okay, good evening. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour. And yes, that's right, folks. We're back. We're back with the Truth Attack. Okay, I'm dealing with some issues here today. I've got a power failure at my house, and I'm doing this with a new setup. I guess the folks who watch the YouTube videos will see that. But I think we can swing this. Why don't we get right into this? We are the Liberty Works Radio Network, and we do need the support of the members of the listening audience to keep the broadcast network operating and the shows coming. So, if you enjoy the information, the lectures, the discussions, the topics, the hosts, and the guests on the other shows on the network, we sure would appreciate it if you could find your way over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website and get signed up as a subscribing member. Even if it's as little as $10, $20 a month, every membership helps, and we do need your support to keep the information coming. And of course, if you want to get fully informed on my favorite topic on this show, which of course is the maladministration, the unconstitutional administration and enforcement of the federal income tax by the IRS, the DOJ, and the lower courts, which has been occurring basically since World War II, well, then you want to find your way over to my information website at www.tax-freedom.com. And if you need help answering an IRS letter for a lien, a levy, or just correspondence, collection correspondence, or if you need help answering the DOJ in court, either civil or criminally, you need to find your way over to irszoom.com and pick yourself up a copy of the document template you need to reply to them with law. So there you go. TaxFreedom.com, IRSZoom.com, and LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com. We're working together to try and restore constitutional government to the American people, together with a constitutional system of taxation, because what we've had for the last 55 years, or rather since World War II, is not a constitutional system of taxation. It's literally a communistic system of taxation. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in probably the second session. But right now I want to get into a little bit with what's happening in current events, because we got two major things kind of occurring. One is the big tax bill, as Trump says, the big beautiful bill, is going to run into problems, I think. The Senate has altered the SALT deduction that Congress set at, I think it was like $40,000, and that was a big issue. The Republican congressmen from the liberal states, New York, California, Illinois, Massachusetts, Maryland, Connecticut, New Jersey, Colorado, at least in those high tax states like California and New York, they were all really pissed and upset when the unlimited SALT deduction went away in 2018 and was capped at $10,000. This $10,000 cap tends to hit the wealthy people in those liberal states, and it hits them in a big way because some of those states end up with tax deductions, state and local tax deductions of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 and more. And of course, if you can deduct $50,000 of state and local tax, SALT, from your federal income before paying tax, well, in a number of cases, that may bump you into a lower tax bracket and effectively really change how much tax you pay. But at any rate, it deducts all of that income from your federal tax roll. And meanwhile, less populated, more rural conservative states like Idaho, Wyoming, the Dakotas, etc., those states, the people of those states can't take advantage of an unlimited SALT deduction because those states have lower state and local real estate and sales taxes. So those states cap out somewhere between probably $3,000 and $10,000 as a useful deduction. The property taxes just aren't that high, except for people that own thousands and thousands of acres, which is not what this discussion is about. So in New York and Connecticut, they've got huge real estate taxes, and the houses have tax bills of $20, $30, $40, $50,000. It all gets deducted from the federal bill. So the people of that state don't contribute their full share of the federal tax burden to the Treasury because they can take advantage of this huge tax deduction, and the conservative states cannot. So the conservative states have felt like their people have been forced to subsidize the welfare states being built in the high tax liberal states, where they're getting to keep all this money in the state as state taxes, and they're using that to build their welfare systems in the high tax liberal New York, California, Illinois, et cetera, et cetera. So the rural conservative population is being forced to subsidize the welfare giveaways of the liberal states. And they don't want to do that, which is why the law in 2018 removed the unlimited state and local tax deduction and capped it at $10,000. So now everybody gets $10,000 if you have that much in state and local tax. And a lot of people still don't, but the $10,000 impacted the liberal states' wealthy people, and they've been yelling about it to their congressman ever since. And the congressmen from New York and probably some of the others have said that they're not going to act on the bill. They won't support it if the Senate eliminates the $40,000 cap that Congress restored in rewriting this bill. They put it back to $40,000 in order to get the conservative Republican congressmen from the liberal states to vote for the bill as liberals. Now, the bill went off to the Senate with that $40,000 cap, and the first thing the Senate did was cut it back to $10,000, which is the right thing to do. The conservative states should not be forced to subsidize the liberal states. The proper way to address this is for the liberal states to terminate the excessive fraudulent spending on liberal welfare programs and to lower their taxes. That's what the people in those states should be voting for. Lower taxes from the state legislature, not an unlimited SALT deduction to subsidize those people living in the liberal state because they don't like their state's high taxes, but won't move out. They want the federal government to pick up the tab for their state's high tax rates and welfare systems that obviously are failing. But they don't care about that. They just want their $50,000 or $40,000 state and local tax deduction. So the Senate cut it out. The Senate said no $40,000 deduction. It's back at $10,000 right where Trump said it. Now that is going to cause congressmen to not support the bill when it comes back to Congress. So it looks like this big, beautiful bill isn't going to pass. It's going to falter. Now, if they can't pass a bill, what it means is that the old tax rates previous to 2018 and the Trump tax change in the law all become retroactively restored to what they were before. That means go back to the more tax brackets with the larger, higher tax rates and the lower tax thresholds for entering the rates, and fewer deductions, fewer and smaller deduction amounts, so that everyone in the country will effectively go back to paying more tax. And the Democrats have been yelling and screaming for, 8 years? Oh, the tax was all for the wealthy, all for Trump's tax change. No, it wasn't. It changed every single bracket. It dropped the rates and gave the poor much larger deductions. All of that is eliminated, and everybody goes back to paying more tax if the bill falters and doesn't pass in the House because the Senate put the cap back at $10,000, and the Republican congressmen in the liberal states follow through and not support it. So they've only got a couple of votes they can lose, and it looks like it's not going to pass because of this issue about the SALT tax. So everyone, they think, is going to have to go back to paying more income tax, unless, of course, you listen to this show. in which case you know that the Supreme Court has already dropped the guillotine blade on the income tax. It's dropping in slow motion. The writing's on the wall. It's just a matter of time before the court's rulings and holdings in Moore last year, in June of last year, where the court ruled the income tax is indirect under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. It's not the direct tax on all earnings under the 16th Amendment they've been enforcing since World War II. So if everyone has to pay more tax, I think that probably this information that the income tax is dead and you don't have to pay it at all anymore can be used to wipe out the new tax burden they're trying to stick us with. And of course, the correct solution is to eliminate the income tax entirely because it doesn't work. It doesn't fund the government, and it isn't collected from the parties that are supposed to be funding the government. The intended subjects were the corporate subjects who are subject on tax and everything they do by excise, which taxes the corporate privilege. Citizens, of course, don't earn by any privilege. They earn by right, and they're not subject to indirect taxation under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. Excise only taxes commodities, licenses, and corporations, and labor doesn't fall into any of those. Imposts tax foreign activity, foreign imports, and in foreign places, and the labor of American citizens isn't subject to impost taxation. Duties tax exported goods, and that's all there is. Imposts on foreigners, duty on exports, and excises on corporations and commodities and licenses like ATF. So there is no tax on income of the American people derived from their right to work, where that income, those earnings, are not derived from an activity, transaction, event, or in a place subject to impost, duty, and excise taxation. Without the impost, duty, and excise, there is no income tax that reaches the labor of the American people. There never has been. It's been a constitutional fraud for 75 years, since World War II, actually, in the victory tax, when they first started taxing the American people directly as the war revenue measure, the victory tax. It lasted for 2 years, and when it expired and nobody had sued the government to stop the unconstitutional tax, Congress decided they couldn't let that power go. They just paid off like 80%, 90% of the World War II debt, and they decided it was too powerful a revenue mechanism to let go. So they passed a new set of laws, which are the current withholding laws, that allow your employer to collect tax from you when you ask him to do it on a W-4. But what happens if you don't ask him to do it? It's not due until next year on April 15th. Can he force you to pay a tax before it's due by law next year? Not without violating the 13th Amendment's prohibition on involuntary servitude. He can't force you to service a future obligation that does not yet exist. That's why they need your allowance, your permission on a W-4. It's not legal without your permission. It's all done by creating in your mind a false belief or presumption of subjectivity, which you then authorize through the withholding. And once they have the money, the only way to get it back is to file a return, and they put you in jail if you don't put everything that you made down on the return and declare it falsely and wrongfully as being taxable to the federal government, even though it wasn't derived from any activity, transaction, event, or in a place subject to any impost, duty, or excise. Because that's all there is under Article 1. And the only way to get to the taxation of labor under Article 1, allegedly, would be to claim labor as a commodity. And therefore it could be taxed because commodities are subject to taxation by excise. But the labor unions saw the government coming. In the 1930s, when they passed the first Social Security Act, the labor union said, oh my God, they're gonna tax our labor. They went to Congress and they had them write Title 15, Section 17, which says the labor of a human being is not a commodity or article of commerce, and that removes your labor from subjectivity to excise taxation. So there is no tax on the American people under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, which the Supreme Court says and more is the actual foundation for the tax, not the 16th Amendment. It's not direct, it's not without limitation, and it's not under the 16th Amendment. All of this was held in the Supreme Court decision of Moore et al. Versus the United States last June. Okay, we'll be back in 5. I hear the first commercial break coming up. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour.